This is the final boss, and this is the Blood Moon Pact, an English Jubensha, which is essentially a RPG mystery game. So each player will read a dossier like this. That's all we're doing today. There will be spoilers, so just be aware spoilers are coming. So if you ever intend on playing the Blood Moon Pact Jubensha, you should pause. Or you should only play as the Dryad. That's who we're editing here. And so usually each person in a Jubensha narrative reads their backstory as a player, gets really up to date on it, knows, okay, I'm, the bad guy, or I'm innocent and I'm trying to get away and to clear my name and whatever that may be. So all those facts are present in this narrative that we're going to read. And so you get your backstory, you get the understanding of what happened during the events of the crime, and then you have to go ahead and solve, hey, okay, what actually did happen? There will be a game manager who has varying degrees of influence on the game, depending on depending on the game itself, if it needs a GM kind of doing more play-by-play. I played a Jubensha called Goodbye Carmen that was very light, where they just really came in once and said, hey, is everybody on the same page? And then at the very end, they say, okay, did you all figure out what was the situation that was really unfolding? And who was the culprit of the crime? But anyways, so let's jump in. So this is going to be, the scenario you would have as a Jubensha player is you would sit down with 4 or 5 of your friends. Each of y'all would be handed a piece of paper, or a sheet of papers, and you will read through it to get, okay, who am I? How do I relate to the crime? What's my perspective on the crime? And so forth. So that's what we're editing tonight. We're not looking at the whole thing. We're looking at one of the characters' dossiers that you would be handed if you were playing the Dryad for this game. The thing that I will call out is that in the editing, it's going to be a little bit tricky, right? Because I don't know all the context, I don't know all the things, but I am going to try my best to read it from the perspective of a player, still look to drive drama, right? Jubenshas, I think you can get away with a lot of exposition because everybody's sitting down to play the game and they just want the context. And you can see with kind of the expository style, the writer is bolding the important things they need to know. Nevertheless, there's always ways I think you can tell a story better. And I think the things that I'm going to be looking out for in this in particular is what are the cues the player is receiving in terms of how to play this character. And so that'll all come down to it. And also, do I come out with a good understanding of the world, or will the GM need to be really, really present and kind of breaking it down when I start? So let's go ahead and jump in. As always with any type of writing, Jubensha, narrative, novel, the first paragraph sentence is critically important. So let's get on with it. On the surface, you are called Great Elder Tree, the Great Elder Tree. You're a respected and ancient chief of the Moonshadow Forest Dryad tribe. I don't even know exactly what a Dryad is. I think it's like an elf person? No? Do I want to Google it? What is tree nymph or spirit? Oak tree spirit. Okay. Got it. The respected and ancient chief of the Moonshadow Forest. Your tribe lives in solitary existence, spending their days in deep meditation, practicing a strict code of pacifism and non-violence, occasionally performing rites of protection and purification over the land. Okay, so there's a few good things that are getting established. There's, again, this is starting very heavily in the exposition world, which I think is more acceptable in Jubensha, where you really are just sitting down reading for 10 minutes in order to play the game. However, I still think that the start is pretty soft. I kind of, I like your tribe lives a solitary existence. There are ways to kind of demonstrate this through the context later on. There are ways to kind of give more clarity of specificity, right? So like the biggest things I would call out are there ways to demonstrate this throughout the story, behaviors the tribe would perform to be isolationist. And, so we can infer this rather than being directly told. Similarly, performing rites of perfection and purification over the land. This is pretty vague. The more specific you can get, the more context you can bring in with whatever statement you're making. So performing, the necessary binding of the old gods to the land at every equinox, whatever that is, like, boom, I know that these, this group of people or dryads are performing a critical piece of infrastructure, essentially, for the fantasy world, right? So rites of protection, purification, it could be anything. Resealing the binding for the dark god Tiamat, much more specific. I know that if they don't do it, the consequences are implied, where if they don't perform rites of protection and purification, is this just kind of more, like a belief system they're doing, or is it actually something that's impacting the world? So, with details like this, be specific and concrete. What rights? A, binding for the old dark deity. Yeah, okay. However, you are burdened with a dreadful secret. You are not the real Great Elder Tree. You are indeed a dryad of Moonshadow Forest, but you were only born 25 years ago, according to for the great lifespan and for this species, you are a mere sapling, an adolescent in human terms. Everything has gone wrong. You can't blame anyone but yourself. Not only are you trapped in the place you've longed to escape from, the forest is growing sicker by the day. So again, pretty vague. In what way are the 8 seals, the first of the 8 seal on the dark deity Tiamat has broken? Oh, what are the concrete manifestations? A bit too pulled out and vague. What are the concrete of this decay? Your tribe needs the Great Elder Tree's leadership now more than ever. What no one can know is that you were unwittingly killed the chief and woke up in their body 6 months ago. Woke up in their body. Okay, so dryads can soul shift, soul merge. All right, color me curious. Your tribe needs the Great Elder Tree's in the past. However, so I'm curious whether I'm whether this is the crime we're investigating. Oh, thank you, Ophelia, for the follow and welcome. Yes, absolutely open to real-time comments. That is one of my favorite things, is talking through some of the logic. Just be aware that the more I still have a limited time, so I will try to go fast, but it's not too crazy. It's 5-6 pages, so I think I can get through it all, even with comments. But just be aware that I have another thing I'll stream after this, just to save the poor developer. Anyways, your tribe is created 6 months ago. In the past, just as trees. So this might mean that I'm the culprit of the murder we're investigating. I'm still not 100% sure what murder we're investigating. And to some degree, I wonder if a summary up top might be helpful. Just, you are playing a Jubensha game. This is a murder has been committed. But no, nobody knows that this murder has been committed. So this is what's going to happen. Book note version. So and so will die. These are the situations that have caused their death. It's hard for me to know without a little, one-line summary of the story on top, whether this is a critical or because the character themselves doesn't know the details. Okay, okay. Whether this is a critical or, less pressing fact. In the past, just as the trees may never leave their roots, so too are dryads bound to the forest. Such are, again, I do think that, even, dryads, the spirits of the trees are bound to the forest. Such was the natural law. However, stories of the outside world were endlessly fascinating, and you learn to see it for yourself. And you yearn to see it for yourself one day. You use Dryad's sacred ability to speak with animals, gifted by Lord Sylvan, the god of nature, to secretly befriend migratory birds who fished in the forest from distant places. Through them, you received a glimpse of the world that was forbidden to you. So I really think it's a smart idea for a character to be tapping into something forbidden, right? That in any story, the taboo and the forbidden in that culture, and one of the characters in that culture bumping up against the taboo and forbidden things in that culture adds an enormous amount of tension. We all know what that experience is like. It makes it very relatable. Again, I think we're running into some of the similar issues where there's a little bit of less concrete description. Because in my mind, it's like, oh, you can't leave the forest. You were literally connected by a spirit chain to a tree. Learning about the outside world does not logically follow in my mind as a forbidden thing. So again, I would sort of say, hey, give an indication or at least a hint of hey, what's the cost? Why is the Lord, not just, Lord Sylvan, not just anti, anti-leaving, but also anti, just even reading a book about the outside world. Being, unable to leave doesn't necessarily match with whoops. I don't know. TikTok freaked out, but let me see if I can do this again here. All right, let's try that. All right, there. X will work. That's so weird. Yeah, I don't know. TikTok gets mad for some reason about certain things. Maybe there was a bad word later on. I don't know. Anywho, I'm not going to worry about it too much. TikTok, very sensitive. Not necessarily learning of it. The glimpse of the world that was forbidden to you. Yeah, okay. So that is what I gathered, why we're being so secretive about learning about it. But anyways, one day, a squirrel informed you of an outsider who entered the forest and was headed towards Moonshadow Lake, a perfectly round lake at the heart of Moonshadow Forest that is rumored, that is, or was. Young dryads like yourself were forbidden from nearing it, but you could not resist meeting someone from the outside world, and you rushed to find them before the Elder Tree did. The previous Great Elder Tree. I don't know. I guess you don't know at that point. When you arrived, you found the stranger, a tired-looking but muscular orc, covered in injuries, lying down on the lake shore. Unexpectedly, lightning bolts shot out of their body in all directions and dissipated in the air, and the orc promptly fell unconscious. What an incredible display of mighty magic, you heard the forest animals say. This feels a little bit on the nose. Something, a dialogue line restating what's pretty clear in the scene will generally be much harder to pull off or to feel organic. A lot of times, dialogue is the most interesting when, given the knowledge we have of the characters in the scene, it somehow is different or surprising. I think an example I used in one of my weird little TikTok demos is, let's say my hat here, oh, it's going to be all gray. Whatever. But I touch an oven pan. I grab a hot oven pan and I go, ouch. That's pretty obvious. That follows. A more at least distinct and unexpected dialogue choice would be to grab a hot oven pan and go, "Oh yeah," like something along those lines where, oh, like that's different. This person enjoys getting burned versus something else like that, or in this context, right? Um, so the fact that we just saw what was, and you're telling us like unexpectedly, like this is, not normal. Like, given the natural order you set up here, it's very clear that like someone just being like lightning, like Thor, is probably outside of the scope of normal things. And so, having the animals kind of restate that feels like a missed opportunity to have them say something unique, or just showing them running away rather than saying that's super weird. And we're already gathering that it's kind of a weird occurrence given the context of the world. Um, Too closely mirroring the facts we've already received in the description. So we're kind of getting the same. Kind of getting the same info twice. Enamored by the mysterious visitor, but fearing the great elder tree would catch the two of you. Enamored. Fascinated? Or like enamored as in. Because enamored kind of implies romance, right? Be filled with a fleeting love for, having a liking or admiration for. Don't know if that's implied, but yes. Um, but the mysterious visitor, but fearing the great elder tree would catch the two of you, you brought them out of the forest with the help of your animal friends and applied healing medicine to the wounds. You left a letter with you expressing your admiration for their abilities and wondered if you two would ever meet again. Interesting. So, with romance, I would sort of like it does actually seem like this is kind of a romantic connection. In that respect, I would try to give at least one detail that is like the spark for this character, right? Both because it will tell great information about both characters. And in any romance story, having a moment of, um, connection, they'll call it a moment of dance where like, in rom-coms, there'll always be a moment where, they get together, they break up, they get together again, right? That's the structure. When they first get together, we want to show the audience how special it is when they are together, and so they have a moment of dance where they're both bantering and really connecting or whatever. And in this case, like even if it's something as simple as she sees this orc, is taken by how vulnerable and someone with such incredible power is, you know, but broken and hurt on the side of the lake. She is like oh, like she wants has a great affection for someone she's saving the life of. Um, that's all valid. I would just bring in a little bit more concrete sort of information about hey, what's actually transpiring between them because um, yeah, I don't know. Again, even coming out of this paragraph, if I'm 100% sure if this letter is some sort of like romantic declaration, or if it's just much more like I saved your life, you owe me, help me get out of this forest. Both are valid choices, but they both imply quite different experiences for the player, and I think that's the thing I think about the most in Jubensha is someone's going to have to embody this character, including their desires and wants. So anything around what this character wants, desires, yearns for, needs to be crystal, crystal clear because that is so much of what a character is the things that they want. Obviously, there's tones of voice, personality, many, many things, but what that person wants is really, really definitive especially for someone playing a character, and it will inform a lot of the choices, which will in turn inform who they are. So again, so yeah, still not 100% clear. This is romantic, or I don't know, or just her goal to escape. Oh, whoops. I jumped all the way to the top somehow. Silly me. I know how to use computers. I promise. Oh, did I not? Whatever. Of course, the great elder tree discovered what you had done and put you under strict supervision indefinitely. Miserable but unable to defy the chief, your plans to escape the forest to see that captivating orc again and explore the world faded into forlorn daydreams. So again, given what was said earlier, it seemed that it was a physical limitation for a dryad to stray too far from their mother tree or whatever that may be. It seems more now that this is a social construct where a dryad could, if they desired, explore the world with a forlorn orc. Or would, this character be at risk of like, oh, if I'm too far away from my tree, if someone like goes between me and my tree and like disrupts the signal, I'll be all fuzzy. And, I'm not super sure exactly what follows from that initial risk, right? So it's interesting that there's always like rules being put around what feels like oh, like, Jeff, you can't jump and fly to the moon. Like, we're not going to allow you to do that. And I can read a bunch of books about jumping so high I fly to the moon. I can talk to my friends about jumping so high I fly to the moon. But if it's a physical impossibility, there's really not much reason for someone to guard against the risk that I will jump as hard as I can and fly to the moon. So yeah, I would make some of those taboos more clear, right? Taboos are so important. And just saying, hey, this is like, giving that transparency. This is a cultural thing. This is something that's being imposed on the people, on the culture, versus something that's like organic to, hey, this is just the natural law. And it was implied, it looked like it was a natural law, but it doesn't seem like that's the case. This seems more like a cultural taboo than a natural law. 6 months ago, one evening, 2 visitors arrived at the Dryad village. The high priest Mariel's worship, the high priest of Mariel's worship, who sought an audience with the great elder tree. I don't know. High priest of Mariel's worship. That just seems like a clunky turn of phrase. Of Mariel's worshippers. I think that's what we're going for. Who sought an audience with the great elder tree on urgent spiritual business and their hired adventurer guard. And again, this is where I would say specificity makes a big difference, right? Because those like myself who've played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, are relatively familiar with like what an adventurer is, what they do. There is some risk of if one of the people playing the Jubensha is not as familiar, this could be potentially a stumbling block for them. There's also quite a bit of variety between adventurers, right? A druid who is really connected with the land might be kind of welcomed as a hero or a companion by these dryads, whereas a barbarian who's got a big axe and who's like ready to cut down a tree might be like, this guy's nuts, like he's trying to kill somebody, we need to get at it, like we need to stop this dwarf, or whatever that wants to chop trees, like Fangorn Forest, right? Like when you're watching Lord of the Rings and you have Legolas, Gimli, and Aragorn walking into a forest, and the orcs as well, the forest reaction is they're all adventurers by definition, but the forest's welcome response, the experience they have, is all vastly changed by the type of adventurer they are, right? Like a dwarf barbarian, essentially what Gimli is, Yeah, the Fangorn is like, get out. Like, we don't want you here. Whereas, Legolas, who's, from the Mirkwood, that forest is like, hey, what's up? Like, my cousin, and so those, are clarifications that I would make soon. Like the fact that our first intro, our bolded intro, is one that is non-specific seems like a bit of a missed opportunity, right? Where bringing in that specific information adds a lot of color, adds a lot of information, can give the players conflicts and interactions that they can play with, right? And that's like kind of the fun thing with all reading and all writing is it's a collaborative process between the writer and the reader, right? Like the writer is just really giving them a guided, imaginative journey, but you're really just trying to give someone else's imagination the tools it needs to have a great experience, right? And so the more information you give someone's brain in the right way when they're playing a character, when they're imagining a character, the more rich that experience will be. Again, I don't know. It's very long-worded or long-winded. I apologize. You can tell me to shut up and move on. It's totally fine. Again, adventurer is vague. The forest and the story might feel different. Whether, this is an elf, a half-elf, elf druid, adventurer, or a dwarf barbarian. Went to their meeting. The tribe's elders emphasized that no one was to leave their home as the custom on a blood moon night. But tonight, the tribe elders and even the great elder tree were obviously shaken. Being an immature dryad, you were never told why. It's okay. Sought on the urgent spiritual business. As the great elder tree went to their meeting, the tribe's elders emphasized that no one was to leave their home, as was custom on a blood moon night. So this is on a blood moon night. Did we get that information before? 6 months ago on the blood moon. Yeah, but tonight, I'd make sure, like, yeah, this feels like this needs to be brought in earlier to give context. Tonight, the tribe elders said, yeah, we're obviously shaken, but are they out? Their homes? Is it only the town people that can't go out on BM lights? Huh. Okay. So again, like those, those would be questions that I would ask, and try to just have some transparency around. I think like this immature dryad not knowing what's going on is totally cool. The areas where more clarity is needed, I think, are around, what are this person's goals? What is my dryad's goals? Like she fell in love apparently with this orc, or at least had a very big connection that was like shooting lightning in a lake. Apparently she can find some path to escape, and she has a great desire to do so. And but is immature and is young and is like trying to kind of navigate a big hierarchical social structure that's kind of preventing her from her desires, right? And so she's leaning towards these forbidden things because that seems to match with what she's actually looking to get out of life. And so yeah, I think those are like really really great pieces, and I think those are the areas where the most clarity, the most precision is critical. And I think those can be dialed up in how well it's executed by adding clarity, adding precision, and then leaving the vague moments for like, hey, like it's okay if she doesn't know why the orc was shooting lightning. That's fine. She should really, really clearly know that she's in love with this orc, or at least has some sort of infatuation. So ambiguity about the character's feelings toward the situation is less like, you don't want that, right? If character experiences something, they don't have to know what they experienced, but they do have to know what they felt about it. And that, I think, is probably one of the biggest takeaways I would say is like, in order for me to learn about this character, when these experiences happen to them, knowing how they responded, what they felt, what they, thought about it, It will be really, really helpful, um, besides just like giving the series of events. With the great elder tree distracted, a dark thought crossed your mind. Was this your chance to escape? A well of anger bubbled up inside you. Anger at your tribe and the elders, anger at their rigid traditions, and anger at your lifelong imprisonment. Yeah, so again, yeah. How much of it is imprisonment versus natural laws, I'm not quite sure. The arbitrary rules put in place by the great elder tree meant nothing to you. I thought it was the other guy. It was Lord Syvan. That's not the great elder tree. That's Lord Syvan. I thought. I don't even know how to spell his name. Sylvan was the one who made this rule. You didn't hesitate to start packing a bag for your first adventure into the world outside Moonshadow Forest. When night fell, as the great elder tree was convening with the priest, you snuck out of your home, as the blood moon cast an eerie red glow over the forest canopy. When you reached the edge, you found it impossible to cross the threshold. You recalled that frustratingly had set up a magical barrier to prevent anyone from exiting the forest without permission. As your mind raced to find a way around the barrier, a crow cawed and beckoned you from nearby. Follow me, you interpreted, and seeing no other option, you allowed it to lead you to Moonshadow Lake. When it flew away, you heard a mysterious voice call out to you, seemingly from the lake itself. Speak with the voice from the lake. Speak with GM. Do not read until after the voice from the lake ends the conversation. Speak with the voice from the lake. Speak with the GM. Do not read until after the voice from the lake ends the conversation. In lieu of having a GM to speak with, here's what the GM says. Young Dryad, you yearn to be free. That is clear to me. The tribe has made you a prisoner. It is a torture I, too, have endured for far too long. If I could grant you the power that will set you free, would you take it? If you do, swim to the center of the lake, and it will be yours. Moonshadow Lake, I think it's good. So, I like that we establish the lake's power earlier. But, it might be cool to get a hint of its sentience and personality sooner. Okay. You did as instructed, but by the time you reached the center of the lake, your body became incredibly weak. In your panic, you began inhaling water and passed out. When you next awoke, you were inexplicably in the great elder tree's home, and the sun was already rising over the treetops. You could tell something was very wrong. Your body was not your own. It was the great elder tree's. Admittingly, you were impulsive last night, but you didn't expect your wish to switch. You didn't expect your wish to switch your body with the great elder trees. That's true. But your wish for freedom. I think that specificity is needed. In panic, you headed for Moonshadow Lake to find any clue about what happened, but when you arrived and found nothing, a horrific realization dawned upon you. A horrific realization dawned. I guess that's okay. This is a little bit of a weird phrasing here. Maybe rephrase. You remember diving into the lake and drowning, which must have somehow caused you to switch bodies with the Drake Elder Tree. If your body drowned in the lake, it must have drowned the Great Elder Tree with it. Normally, when a dryad dies, their body transforms into a tree and their soul continues nourishing the ecosystem. Except this time, the Great Elder Tree's soul would be trapped underwater where no tree should ever be, an eternal torment. The voice from the lake did not respond, no matter how much you raged against it. So I would say, how did I rage against it? Again, always go to the concrete, always go towards actions that have happened, activities that have transpired, things that have transpired, rather than a summary of what's transpired. So, you screamed and threw a rock and said, "How dare you! This defies the Dryad people, but the lake was silent. And boom, we get that exact same thing, but it actually has a little bit more color. So consider, communicating this with the context of, what actions did the character take to rage against the lake machine. Rage against the lake. Sorry, I used to like rage. I still like Rage Against the Machine. Leaving the forest as an insignificant dryad was one thing, but abandoning the forest, the great elder tree, was quite another. Masquerading as a chief or confessing to your crime, either way, your dreams of one day tasting adventure turned to dust. Over the 6 months, you maintained a lie. I feel like the chief is the one that makes the rules. Like, I would be like, I don't know why, why didn't this dryad pass a new law and just say, it's cool to leave now. You maintained the lie. You couldn't let your tribe find out what you'd done, and so you became the great elder tree. You now had the experience and aptitude for leadership, and you weren't able to remove the great elder tree's barrier. You quickly realized that you did not inherit the great elder tree's mana, the source of magic inherent to most mortal beings. You had no mana yourself, as dryads only gain mana after fully maturing. Although the great elder tree's stern reputation suppressed the tribe's suspicions, the forest knew better. Disease began to infect large parts of the forest without the great elder tree's stewardship, and the tribe turned to you to solve a problem that was no doubt your fault to begin with. You were trapped more than you'd ever been, not physically as before, but now by the suffocating shackles of deception, guilt, and responsibility. The most horrible shackles of all. In the present, it's been exactly 6 months since your terrible wish, and you dread the return of the blood moon tonight. You only emerged from your bedroom in the late afternoon to find a note and pages ripped from a book among the mail delivered to your home. The note. The barrier's still there. Okay. Interesting. Okay. The note, the great elder tree. I write to you, bearing the fruits of my research. In the past 6 months since you hired me, I've combed through the library below Moonshadow Lake. What a marvel! I've now found the answer to the forest disease. I've enclosed the pages most vital to our cause. With so little time before sundown, I guess this is an academic, with so little time before sundown, I have already written to the priest, who has agreed to arrive tonight, the forest's eastern entrance upon sunset. I shall open a portal to guide you to the shrine where I now wait. Please bring a vial of Moonshadow Lake's water for the ritual. At dawn, we may rejoice in healing Moonshadow Forest. The pages. Moonshadow Forest has long shown remarkable resistance to disease and wildfire. The resistance is attributed to the nobly circular body of water situated at center Moonshadow Lake. Indeed, legends say that the lake's waters were the key to curing disease of another forest. Centuries ago, the great elder tree bestowed upon the then high priest of Mariel's worship a vial of Moonshadow Lake's waters. At the center of the diseased forest, the priest drank from the vial, and by dawn the forest began healing. Scholars surmise that this is possible due to the lake's purifying properties channeled through a healer blessed by the god of love. Joy stirs your heart at the thought of seeing the forest whole once more. Even it's okay. So, and this is like the interesting thing where this character's been presented as very resentful against their situation for quite some time. It's hard for me to see them getting a really big spike of joy over a new responsibility, which is, hey, now this character as the Great Elder Tree needs to go do more stuff, be responsible. And so, like, duty maybe, joy, I don't know, unless like watching the forest is really, really like been its own, source of suffering, which is, I think, kind of established earlier, but like, this is a new responsibility. on what this character already sees as too many responsibilities. Would joy be the first response? Even in death, it seems the great elder tree's foresight still protects the land. You gather your satchel. I think it might be more like relief. Okay. Yeah, or the last elder. I guess elder tree. Even in death, it seems great. Elder Tree's foresight still protects the land you gather. Your satchel, stocked as always with salves and restoratives. Stop by a lake to fill a vial with lake water and ready yourself for the fateful night ahead. You find the portal at the forest edge just as a blood moon is replacing the sun in the darkening sky. These thoughts occupy your mind as you step inside. Interesting. So this definitely, I mean, it's interesting because in this is kind of a mix, it feels like, of an RPG and a Jubensha, which is cool, right? Like, it sounds like we're going to be embarking on a series of events that will start to transpire around this new blood moon, which is interesting. I did not expect. I think in the one that I did months ago, there's like usually like at least like it started with like there being a body, like so this person was murdered, and then you're kind of backtracking, sort of saying, okay, what was the cause? Who was the culprit? And you're just like talking amongst each other, giving your histories and like, did you find this thing? Did you find this thing? Well, who was over there? Um, your goals: perform the healing ritual and save the forest. The actual murder for investigation takes place later. The players will read about it after. Got it. Perform the healing ritual and save the forest. A scholar will know more based on their research. Find out the cause of the forest sickness. Find out what the great elder tree was so concerned about 6 months ago. Your secret: you are not the great elder tree. The crime of killing a centuries-old chief is grave, and you cannot bear the thought of that kind of punishment. But I don't think this character intentionally killed anyone. It seems like an accident. Um, you know, this, seems more accidental than criminal. Is the, character's inexperience making, this more terrifying for them? I mean, for all shapes and purposes, this person died. Like, like her body went missing and no one's cared. They're just like, cool, business as usual. Apparently this young dryad went out into the water when they didn't want her to go out of town and then just died. Like, so that's another question I'm kind of curious about is like, yes, she switched places with the priest and the priest actually seems to have died within her corpse, or gone to the bottom of the lake, the great elder tree. But if they were so like, you cannot leave this place, that they put up a huge magical barrier, it is a little strange that they weren't like, where did that chick who was trying to leave end up going? Like, like, so I would try to at least give some sort of indication of, oh, like my actual body washed up on shore and they planted it to grow into a tree, whatever that may be. I would at least know in your mind as the writer, at least what was the fallout from that initial, like, there's a missing person case already. Like this character, there were 2 people walked in, 1 people walked out. Like the elder and her, there was a blood moon, the elder and her went out, only the elder came back. What happened to this young, dryad? So yeah, food for thought. I'm also assuming, I think the dryad is female. I don't know if we were ever specified. But yeah, I guess my brain just associates dryads with that, but I could be completely wrong. The dryad feels this way due to both inexperienced feelings of guilt and might be irrational. Also, manslaughter is still a crime in the real world. True. But it was, very, very like the last thing I would expect. A gender neutral character all around. Got it. but yeah, okay. I think that makes sense. Cool. Well, overall, yeah. So, what are my thoughts? So, in terms of the narrative, I like this character is flawed. I can write it down here. I don't think this is my copy of it. I think so. I don't think I'll be messing up your thing. And if I do, I can fix it. Um, Overall, the good. Um, I like that there are flaws, that there are short sightedness to this character. That's really really valuable. The flaws and short sightedness character make it an interesting person to play for the narrative. Um, um, a lot of like the events are very interesting. I do, yeah, like the sequence of events and occurrences that transpire in this little village are like cool and interesting. And I'm actually very curious to see who the other characters in this Jubensha are. And so, oh hey, are there? Obviously it sounds like there's a scholar, but is one of the people the orc? Well, they have a memory of shooting lightning, and how do these pieces come together? I think I'm very, very curious to understand, and I'm like, oh, will they like which one of these are red herrings or how do they all tie together? I think is very interesting. Um, yeah, the things I would improve, I would really, it's for better or for worse, it's kind of like the old writing adage of show don't tell. And I know orc, prophet, mercenary, scholar, priest, elf are the others, though the priest is an NPC, the victim. Okay, the priest. Oh, the one from the other worshippers of um yes, that one. Okay, interesting. So yeah, I think the things that I would think about are any ways to show don't tell, especially around the feelings and impressions a character is getting from a situation. Um, Show the actions, not just summarize the results, the actions the character takes in fear or ignorance. Not just summarize the results, give examples, lists. Yeah, and that's one of like the weird things in writing is like one of the most powerful like tools or a very powerful tool, but that kind of implies a way to think about it is lists. Because it's all these concrete things in series that in a series mean more, right? Like the Blood Moon, you know, like those are like these good concrete things, but some of them I didn't get as much of the characters feeling about them, right? Like we see that they're I forget where I was tapping on that. Yeah, so like even this like forbidden daydream thing, like we know that she's daydreaming, but like what are those daydreams? Like what is so appealing that's in her imagination or their imagination that's making them want to go out and there's also reading time. I need to ensure a minimal word count with maximum impact. Sometimes players fixate on irrelevant details and add them for no other reason. Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's critical to solving than it wasn't. Yeah, yeah. I think it's achievable maybe, but it's a little bit tricky. I would think so. Yeah. Valid, valid. I would say ensuring the emotional responses of the character to the world around them and events are crystal clear, and even described moment by moment, you know. So like those are the places, yes, like you might not want to expand it that much, but you know, when she sees this orc, like you know, where was the orc? Um, yes, or they. I keep saying she. I apologize. Um, when you arrived, you found a stranger, tired but muscular, orc covered in injuries, lying down lay shore. Lightning bolts shot out of their body in all directions. You know, but again, like there's ways to develop that. Like you crouch down next to this creature on the lake. It was such a beautiful. You as a player pick what you want. Yeah, yeah. You know, but you know this orc was so vulnerable and tired in their broken state. You reached out unconsciously and wanted to caress their cheek when, boom, suddenly lightning burst out of them and they, blah, 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 blah. So again, similar word count, but by bringing us a little bit into scene and showing us, like, hey, what's the action this character takes when they feel enamored with somebody, when they feel attracted to somebody. Um, those things are the pieces that I would, say that even, if you do add an extra sentence or two, those I think will support the long term goals of the writer, which is how do I get this character into the player's skull, into the player's mind, and in the way that they can successfully play them. But overall, thank you so much. This was awesome. It was great fun to read a Jubensha, especially when the characters like backstories. I'm very curious to see how all these elements tie together. And yeah, I like I said, I'm if you want to share over stuff, I can try to get our D&D group together. We're gonna be trying to play a one shot later this month, so let me know. Happy to take a look. But yeah, great job. You those of you who watch the VOD or whatever down the road, you should definitely check out this Jubensha, the Blood Moon Pact. I don't know if there's a website or a place where it's for sale. Feel free to put it in chat, and I'm sure that folks who are connecting with the story and have the same questions I do of, okay, these are some interesting elements that are formulating, what comes of it. Very interested to see how that shakes out. So thank you so much for sharing this with me. Fantastic work. Fantastic. Oh, yes. Twisted. Okay, here we go. Copy link. I'll put it here before I close it out. I'll do it on the bottom here. Twist and Turn Studios. Well, let me add it. Okay. Twist and Turn Studios.ca/blood-moon-jubensha. So yes, you should all check this out. Pre-order, support creators, and Jubenshas are pretty special. I really was impressed by the ones that I've played. I think they're really clever. Clever game design, clever world building, and it's definitely an experience worth pursuing. So good luck. Go find some cool Jubenshas to play. I had quite the time finding ones written in English, which was, I think, the biggest challenge. Since they're not at least originated, the art form didn't originate in the West, and so it is a little bit tricky to find. But if you do, there was some really good ones that we played called Goodbye Carmen, I believe, and then I have a few other ones I've been meaning to take a look at as well. So thank you again to the writer. And thank you for your great comments and your great feedback. And best of luck. I hope this one does very, very well. And have a great evening. Ta-ta for now. All right. Did I click it?